So this is the beginning of how you'd put together a simple binding. Before you've pressed your strips, the first thing you're going to have to do is join them all together. I've got a stack here of like 16 2.5-inch strips, which will make plenty of binding for a placemat project that I'm going to do. These strips have not yet been joined together, so they're all still the width of the fabric from selvage to selvage, which is around 42 inches. I'm going to actually sew these together, and then we're going to take them and press them in half. I'm using just this half fold binding where we're going to sew one edge and flip it over onto our product. The first thing you need to do, and as long as you have a little bit of extra fabric for waste, you're not going to have to worry about these overhangs because those are going to be trimmed off anyway. You'll want to cross over your fabric at approximately a 90-degree angle. You're going to put right sides together. I have a solid fabric, so that's harder to see here. But you're going to put right sides together, and then you're going to match up not the corner where they've made the intersection, but this far corner. And you're going to stitch a line from this corner all the way to this corner. The reason you sew the diagonal is because it reduces bulk in your seam when you're putting it on as a binder. I'm using just a standard presser foot, and I'm lining up the intersection of those two fabrics in the center and sewing in a center needle position. You're going to just sew a straight line from corner to corner, exiting on the opposite side. When you've done that, your fabric should fold out like this. So I've already sewed the first one, and I'm just adding the second strip to it, crossing it over, centering it on my machine. I don't even feel like I need to pin it. As long as you pick the center of that intersection accurately, it won't matter. You can hold it in place with your finger. I like to have a line of tape or a marker line coming out further from my needle plate. This helps me keep my intersection centered as I move across the machine. The next step to your binding prep is to press it. If you did like I did, all of your strips, they're sewn together, but they're also chain piece, so you've got all these little strings in between them. We're going to go through and we're going to press our binding out and clip off all of the excess fabric and iron it kind of assembly line style. I like to bring a mini cutting board over to my ironing board, and I start on one end and just work my way out, pressing my fabric as we go. Remember, if you have a bias binding, be extra careful not to stretch your binding as you go, because if you do, you'll have narrower sections of binding. So here I've already pressed my seam, and I'm just folding my fabric strips in half to make my half-inch, using my 2.5-inch strips. This is going to be my binding. I'm going to continue this process for this entire length of strips that I have to make a nice roll of binding to prep for my placemats.